welcome to Health Talk. I'm Dr. Manny. Oftentimes, the one thing holding you back from reaching your goals is you. I know it's hard to hear. The good news is there are ways to train your brain for success. Joining me now is psychotherapist and author of 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do, Amy Morin. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
This idea of the book started as a blog. So why did you feel so, that you had to blog about this and begin to make a list of things?
Well, I really wrote it when I was at one of the lowest points in my life. My mother had passed away in 2003, and then on the 3-year anniversary of when she died, my 26-year-old husband died of a heart attack.
Oh my God.
A few years down the road, my father-in-law was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And I found myself starting to think, why do these things always have to happen to me? And why do I have to lose another loved one? And I really realized that way of thinking would hold me back. So I sat down and I wrote this list as a reminder to myself of all those things that could hold me back if I wanted to be as strong as I knew I was going to need to be to go through this again.
All right, well, that's a good impetus to write a book like this. Now, I want to, we said that the 13 things, but let's go over 5 of the 13 points that mentally strong people don't do. All right?
Okay.
So give me a list of 5 you want to talk about.
Number 1 on my list is that mentally strong people don't feel sorry for themselves.
How do I overcome that? Because, there are people that are born this way. So what do you tell them about that feeling? I mean, how are we supposed to get rid of that?
Well, self-pity, it's a lot different than just feeling sad or feeling upset. When something bad happens...
So if you feel sad, you feel depressed, that's different.
Right.
But if you feel like, that you're not... if you're not feeling in a positive mood all the time, how do I turn that around? What things do we do?
Well, self-pity comes in when you start to think you exaggerate your misfortune, when you think I shouldn't have to deal with all these problems, or that my life is worse than anybody else's. So you have to change the way that you think. And gratitude is the number 1 way to get rid of self-pity, because you can't feel grateful at the same time as you're thinking, I deserve better than this. And so if you can practice gratitude, it will extinguish self-pity.
All right. So another point that you make in the book is give away their power. Explain that.
We tend to blame other people for the way that we think, feel, or behave by saying, my mother-in-law makes me so mad, or my boss drives me crazy. But in reality, nobody makes you do anything. And so some part of it's just taking back your power and saying all of these things that I do, think and feel, are a choice. From the time I wake up until the time I go to bed, I don't really have to do anything. There's consequences if you don't do some things, but it's still a choice.
Another thing that you mentioned is fear of taking calculated risks. Explain that to me.
Yeah, most of us are pretty bad at calculating risk, and our emotions cloud our judgment. When we're really excited about something, we minimize the risk. But when we're scared of something, we think, well, it must be really risky. But the truth is, a lot of times our emotions aren't based on logic. And we make our best decisions when our emotions and our logic are in check. So sometimes you got to stop and set aside your emotions for a bit to really evaluate the facts before you make a decision.
Now, in those lines, a lot of times people have a fear of doing something, or because they fear failure. Mm-hmm. For instance, just this morning I had a discussion with the doctor. He says, well, I don't want to talk about these issues because I'm afraid that somebody's going to steal my ideas. So, again, give me an exercise or something that I could do, because you can't think yourself through this sometimes. So are there baby steps that one needs to take?
Yeah, sometimes just identifying you're failing. Okay, I'm afraid of this. And is that why I'm avoiding it, or am I avoiding it because it's actually risky? And then you can help make that decision of, okay, what's one small step I could take to see what happens? A behavioral experiment, like we like to call it in the psychotherapy business, to say if I take one small step and see what happens, and then if it goes okay, then do I dare take another small step before I get all the way there? But usually you don't have to jump all the way in at once, but we convince ourselves that we do, so we just avoid those things that are scary to us.
Let me get back to the title, and I want to talk about one point. You say, in the title is that mentally strong people don't do. So it really has nothing to do with success, right? It's more, how mentally mature you are and strong you are. That's the whole premise of looking at these things.
Well, again, my book's about figuring out what your definition of success is. And I think when you're mentally strong, you can work towards reaching your own definition of success. It may not have anything to do with money or your status in life, but it's really living according to your values. And when you're mentally strong, you can do that.
Right. Now, one of the other points that you make is you resent others people's success. I'm very jealous of all my peers, my other doctors. I hate them all. And that makes me physically ill. Mm-hmm. So, I haven't been able to get rid of that, no matter how much I go to church.
So, sometimes we tend to look at other people and we think that their success diminishes our own sometimes.
Of course, they make more money than me, they're younger than me, they're thinner than me.
Right.
They have a nicer wife than me.
Sure. And the more that we do that, it takes our eyes off of our own goal. And every minute you spend looking at somebody else's goals and what they're doing in life is another minute you're not working towards your own definition of success.
So get rid of that.
Yes, focus on your own path and know what your definition of success is. Sometimes we look at other people doing things that we don't even really want to do anyway, but we're jealous of them.
All right. One point that you also tell people not to do is to keep making the same mistakes over and over again. In other words, learn from our mistakes.
Right. I think we're trained sometimes to hide them or cover them up or make excuses for them. And when you do those things, you can't learn from them. And if you don't learn from them, you're probably going to repeat them.
All right. So where's the book available?
It's in all the major bookstores, Target, Barnes & Noble.
And do you have a website that people can go to?
I do. It's Amy Morin, LCSW, as in licensed clinical social worker.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
And if you have any health questions, send them here at Fox at drmanny@foxnews.com. Until next time, I'm Dr. Manny.